She was the loyal daughter in a powerful military family, until she uncovered a betrayal so deep it threatened the nation's security and tore her bloodline apart. When duty clashes with blood, will she choose the truth, or the family legacy built on lies? Sarah Morrison sat stiffly in the back seat of the sleek Blacktown car, its leather interior stifling despite the cool autumn breeze whispering through the cracked window. Her uniform, a sharp blue dress ensemble, hugged her frame with pristine precision. Ribbons adorned her chest like war-born jewelry. Polished buttons caught flickers of sunlight and tossed them across the car like Morse code. She adjusted the brim of her cap and caught her reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes steeled, jaw set. The mansion came into view, perched arrogantly on the Virginia hillside like a monument to inherited power. Massive stone columns flanked the wide entryway. Stained glass windows glowed with warm interior light. The sprawling lawn looked manicured down to each blade. Sarah clenched the folder in her lap tightly. Beneath her coat, it felt like a second heart, pounding with danger, duty, and a different kind of dread. She had stormed insurgent bases in foreign deserts. She had directed cyber ops that saved cities from blackouts. She had briefed four-star generals and testified before closed-door Senate committees. But nothing, not war, not politics, not the shadow games of espionage, sent adrenaline hammering through her chest like walking into her childhood home. It had been 10 years since she attended a Morrison family gathering. 10 years since she was told, lovingly, diplomatically, and with a brandy-soaked laugh, that she'd fallen back on the military because she couldn't cut it in the corporate world. 10 years since she stopped trying to earn their respect. The butler opened the door before she reached it. "Miss Sarah," he said with a mix of surprise and suppressed affection. "Lieutenant Colonel Morrison now, Harold," she replied with a small smile. He blinked, stepped aside, and ushered her into the grand foyer. Marble tiles gleamed beneath her boots. Crystal chandeliers hung like inverted icebergs overhead. Music and laughter spilled from the dining room where her family gathered without waiting. She paused outside the doors, taking one breath to steady herself, then pushed through. Conversations faltered, heads turned, and then, "Sarah!" "Her," Mother exclaimed, setting down a flute of champagne. Elaine Morrison wore her signature navy dress and pearls, the same uniform she'd donned for fundraisers, galas, and carefully curated photo ops. Her face was a studied mix of maternal warmth and subtle calculation. "You didn't say you were coming." "Wasn't sure I'd be welcome," Sarah replied. "Don't be silly." Elaine waved a hand and air kissed her cheek. "We always have room for family." Michael appeared next, glass of red wine in hand, sleeves rolled up like he'd just stepped out of an executive retreat. "Still wearing that uniform?" He grinned. "You know you could be making real money in the private sector." Sarah tilted her head. "I do all right," Michael smirked. "Defense contracts, huh?" Among other things. She noticed her father at the far end of the table. William Morrison, founder and CEO of Anderson Global, hadn't moved. His steely eyes skimmed over her uniform like she was a guest speaker from a career day at the local high school. He finally spoke. "Good of you to come, Sarah." That was it. No hug. No smile. No mention of her latest commendation or the Defense Intelligence Medal she had received last month for preventing a cyber-terrorist attack on U.S. soil. Dinner was as uncomfortable as she expected. The table glittered with silverware, candlelight, and thinly veiled condescension. Michael regaled everyone with tales from a corporate merger that had nearly tanked until he stepped in and saw the angles no one else did. Elaine gushed about a new interior decorator. William asked questions only to interrupt with longer anecdotes. Sarah listened, smiling politely, occasionally sipping her wine, mentally reviewing line breaks in encrypted code she'd seen earlier. That week, then came the inevitable. "So," Michael leaned in, resting his chin on his knuckles, "what exactly do you do in the army these days? Like, do you still carry a gun? Or is it more of a keyboard warrior type thing?" Sarah grinned. "A little of both. Last month, I helped neutralize a ransomware cell operating out of Eastern Europe. We traced their server hops, deployed false access points, and shut down their entire network before they could blackmail a hospital chain. Michael blinked. Sounds intense. Her mother cut in with a laugh. Well, I'm just glad you're doing something that gives you purpose, sweetheart. Purpose, Sarah echoed. Right. William finally looked up. You know, we're expanding our cybersecurity division. Michael's leading it. Maybe you could consult. We might find a spot for you. A fallback for the fallback, Michael quipped, chuckling. Sarah put her wine glass down. I already work in cybersecurity, she said. Michael leaned back, intrigued. Really? For whom? She reached into her coat, pulled out the sealed folder marked Classified Top Secret, and placed it on the table like a live grenade. For you. The room fell still. Even the clink of cutlery stopped. William's eyes narrowed. What is this? Sarah met his gaze without flinching. Your systems have been compromised. Elaine laughed nervously. Surely that's a joke. Not by what? Sarah said, turning back to her father. By who? After dinner, while the others whispered behind closed doors, Sarah stood alone in the driveway beside her parked town car. The chill had deepened. Her breath fogged the air. She looked up at the house where she once played hide-and-seek with cousins who now pretended she didn't exist. The front door opened behind her. Michael stepped out, hands shoved in his pockets. So, he said. That folder. You're serious? As a heart attack. He rubbed his jaw. You should have come to us first. I did. 2 years ago. Your assistant never returned my call. Still, he said, softer now. You think we're that incompetent? No. I think you're arrogant, which is worse. Michael exhaled sharply, then nodded. All right, come in on Monday. Let's talk about this. She didn't respond. Instead, she got into the car, folder beside her, eyes fixed on the road ahead. As the house faded in the rearview mirror, Sarah pulled out her phone and opened a secure messaging app. Transmit. Phase 1 complete. Evidence confirmed. Ready for escalation. The response came instantly. Standby. Joint Chiefs debrief tomorrow. Prepare public protocol. Sarah looked out the window at the passing lights of DC tomorrow. They'd know who she was. The Pentagon's west entrance gleamed in the morning sun, its austere concrete facade a brutalist reminder of power engineered into architecture. Sarah passed through security with silent efficiency. Her badge, an elite-level DoD clearance, clipped to her collar like a blade. Around her, the buzz of war rooms, polished boots, and classified conversations was as normal as oxygen. She had been summoned to room 4B701, an unassuming door with reinforced steel and a biometric scanner. It didn't open until her pulse, fingerprint, and retinal scan matched 3 federal databases. Inside, a long, dimly lit chamber with soundproofed walls. 4 men and 1 woman sat at a sleek obsidian table. Behind them, no windows, just a projection screen, currently dark. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Lawrence Kincaid, nodded once. Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, sit. She did, spine straight. You've brought us something unexpected, said the woman to his right, NSA Cyber Directorate Chief Yvette Song. Her face bore no makeup and no emotion. Walk us through it. Sarah placed the folder on the table. With a flick of her hand, a microchip embedded in the corner activated. A 3D holographic projection rose, glowing cyan, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. This is Project Horizon, she began. Or rather, the shell company hiding inside it. 2 weeks ago, I began a covert trace into obfuscated IP routing within Anderson Global's infrastructure. That trace led me to encrypted transactions funneled through 6 offshore accounts. Accounts managed by Black Hatch, a known cyber mercenary collective responsible for attacks on defense contractors in Europe. The room didn't move. Kincaid's stare didn't blink. Sarah went on. These accounts weren't just penetrated. They were created by a backdoor intentionally embedded in Anderson's latest AI-driven defense firewall. That firewall was installed in 11 key military contractor systems last quarter, which means, Song cut in, her voice deadly quiet. We may have deployed a compromised firewall into our own weapons development programs. Sarah nodded. And my father signed off on its final integration. The room erupted. What's the confidence level on this intel? Barked Kincaid. Triple confirmed, Sarah said. I ran 3 independent AI models. Same results. The breach didn't come from outside. It was designed internally. For profit. Another man slammed his hand on the table. If this leaks, it won't, said Song. Not yet. Not until we assess the full scope. Kincaid turned to Sarah. You said this is personal. Your father, your brother. Explain. Sarah drew a slow breath. When I first joined the army, I tried to warn my family about the ethical hazards. In defense profiteering. They dismissed me, called me naive. Over the years, I kept my distance, but I never stopped watching. When I saw the Firewall Anderson Global release last year, something didn't sit right. The code was too aggressive, too predictive. It wasn't defense, it was surveillance. I went digging. And, asked Song, I found backdoors, tracer loops, shell code cloaked in deep obfuscation, code that learned how to evade intrusion detection, the kind of code Black Hatch has used before. And then I found the money trail, hidden under layers of plausible deniability. Kincaid was quiet for a long time. Then he stood. This is now a national security issue. Effective immediately, we're launching a joint task force. Colonel Morrison, you'll lead it. Sarah blinked. Sir, you know the players, you know the network. You're inside the problem. Now get us out of it. By afternoon, Sarah was back in her temporary command center, a war room buried 4 levels below Arlington in an unmarked facility. Concrete walls, red and green monitors, operatives moving like chess pieces. She stared at the digital map glowing on the central screen. Dozens of points pulsed, contractor locations, data leaks, shell firms, and secure nodes. At the center, Anderson Global Headquarters, her family's empire. That evening, the top floor of Anderson Tower. Michael Morrison's office gleamed with glass and steel. Custom bourbon bottles lined the oak shelf. A drone of distant city traffic hummed behind tinted windows. He was reviewing quarterly earnings when the door burst open. Jesus, he started, but froze. Sarah stepped in, wearing a full combat uniform. Behind her, 2 federal agents in dark suits. You can't be serious, he said, half laughing. We have questions, she said coldly. About Project Horizon, about your knowledge of its development, about your authorization of firewalls that compromised U.S. defense contractors. Michael's smirk wavered. This is some kind of joke. You think you can storm in here like Jack Ryan and… Michael, Sarah said, voice low, you're not under arrest. Yet. But if you don't cooperate, the next people through that door will be wearing FBI jackets and carrying federal warrants. He stood, nostrils flaring. This is our company, our family's legacy. You traded that legacy for 30 pieces of silver, she snapped. You think I knew? I trusted the tech team. We outsourced Horizon. I didn't personally write the code, but you signed the final deployment, which means either you were complicit or incompetent. Michael's face darkened. You always hated that I was the heir. I hated that I was the only one who inherited integrity. Silence. Then Michael slumped into his leather chair. You think Dad knew? I don't know, she said. But I intend to find out. Later that night, Sarah arrived at the Morrison estate once again, this time uninvited. Her father sat alone in his study, whiskey in hand, fireplace glowing. Framed medals lined the walls, not hers. His, from boardrooms, from investors, from the president. He didn't look surprised to see her. You burned the family name today, he said. Sarah walked in, unblinking. No, you did. I'm just lighting the torches so no one else gets burned. You don't understand how things work. I understand exactly how they work. You made billions off the illusion of patriotism, while letting our enemies siphon data through systems you approved. William took a slow sip. There's no evidence I knew about the breach. No direct evidence, she said. but patterns. Emails, sign-offs, you knew something, you looked the other way. Because sometimes, he said, you look the other way to survive. No, Sarah said, her voice hard. Sometimes you look the other way to profit. He stood towering over her. You want to destroy this family? Go ahead. You'll go down with us. She stepped closer. Wrong. I already fell. You just didn't notice when I got back up. The following morning, headlines exploded. Whistleblower colonel exposes cyber espionage within defense conglomerate. Anderson Global under federal scrutiny for potential compromise of national security firewalls. Family fallout. The Morrison divide. Sarah stood before a bank of microphones at a press conference outside the Pentagon. I didn't come forward to attack my family. I came forward to protect my country, she said. There is no price tag on loyalty, no shortcut to ethics, and no uniform more powerful than the truth. Flashbulbs fired, reporters shouted. The wind carried her voice across the marble steps and into history. Back in her war room, her team had already begun work on reversing the breach, but Sarah knew this wasn't the end. Her family name was tarnished. Her enemies were powerful, and her soul carried the invisible wounds of betrayal from those who shared her blood. Still, she had chosen her war, and this time, she wouldn't fall back. Title: Fall Back, No More Part. 3. The Reckoning Word. Count: 6,000. The storm had begun, and Sarah Morrison was in its eye. 2 weeks after the press conference, the world had changed, at least for the Morrison family and Anderson Global. Federal investigators were stationed inside the company headquarters. Black Hatch's activities were traced to multiple global breaches, and their software partnerships, brokered discreetly through Anderson Global, had been severed by every major contractor. Her brother Michael had resigned under pressure. Her father, once untouchable, had been subpoenaed. But the reckoning wasn't over, because someone else was pulling the strings. And Sarah had one last trail to follow. The Red Vault was an unofficial operations center buried beneath an obsolete post office. It was where the NSA and DoD conducted unauthorized joint counter-cyber efforts, off the record, off the books, and the grid. Sarah stood before a digital map stitched together from dozens of forensic analyses. At the center, a name, Vladimir Sechenov, a Russian-born technocrat presumed dead in 2019, but new intel suggested he was alive, operating under an alias through European shell companies, and deeply involved in Black Hatch's resurrection. Was the architect, Sarah told the assembled cyber team. He designed the behavioral mimicry AI that hides Black Hatch's malware inside live defense systems, and he needed a pipeline into U.S. military networks. Anderson Global gave him that. And he paid your family handsomely for the door key, said NSA's Yvette Song flatly. Sarah nodded. I have no doubt Michael accepted the deal, but I think my father may have been manipulated, not innocent, but exploited. Another agent leaned in. We just intercepted a secure message. Sechenov is hosting a private summit on a yacht off Dubrovnik, a known gathering of cybercriminal financiers. Then we crashed the party, Sarah said, eyes narrowing. Hours later, the sea was black glass beneath a starless sky. A luxury yacht, the Tsarina, floated silently under international waters, its surface dotted with soft gold lighting and discreet security. Sarah, in tactical gear, clung to the hull of a speedboat just below radar detection range. Beside her, a 4-person infiltration team waited for the signal. Visuals confirm Sechenov aboard, whispered one agent through comms. Signal jammers ready. Boarding route green. Sarah exhaled slowly. Execute. They moved like shadows, hooking lines onto the lower rail, disabling cameras, and scaling the hull. Within 4 minutes, they were inside. Sarah split from the team, slipping through the corridors in silence. Her objective was Sechenov's private server room, where she believed the last master key to the entire Black Hatch architecture was stored. She breached the lower-level suite and plugged in a portable decryption drive. Lines of code scrolled. Faster, faster, until she froze. A file popped up. Marked simply Morrison Pact 2018, her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. It was a video, her father, In a private meeting with Sechenov, the audio was clear. My daughter's in the military. She'll ask questions. I'll keep her out of the loop, as long as you guarantee the firewall is only used for commercial clients. It won't be, Sechenov replied. Once it's in, we control it. Her father hesitated. Make sure she's never affected, he said finally. That's all I ask. Sarah's heart dropped. He knew, not everything. But enough, and worse. He'd tried to protect her while sacrificing the rest. Alarms blared. Team Alpha compromised, came a voice over the comms. Repeat, security breach on deck 3. Sarah grabbed the drive and bolted for the exit. Gunfire erupted above. Her team was engaged. She rounded a corner and froze. Sechenov, tall, lean, face obscured by thin-rimmed glasses and a calculating smirk. I was hoping you'd come, he said in a smooth Eastern European accent. You're done, she said, raising her weapon. He raised a hand, mockingly. You Americans always believe in good and evil. But what you call betrayal, we call insurance. Your insurance policy is burning, he smiled coldly, and yet here we are. You, a soldier, alone, betrayed by blood, and me, still in control. Not for long. Behind her, agents stormed the corridor. Sechenov reached for something. Too late. Sarah pulled the trigger. One shot. Non-lethal. He collapsed, clutching his leg. Guess I inherited more than you thought, she whispered. 2 weeks later, the room was silent as Sarah sat before the microphone. Behind her, screens showed decrypted files, video evidence, and contract logs linking Anderson Global to Black Hatch and Sechenov. In your assessment, Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, the chairman asked, was this an act of corporate negligence? Or corporate treason? Sarah paused, then said evenly, it was both. A family legacy used as a gateway for cyber warfare. But it ends today, the crowd murmured. Are you suggesting criminal charges be filed against your father? A longer pause. Then, yes. No one is above accountability, not even those we love. The gavel dropped. A formal investigation was ordered. Arrests followed. Michael, several board members, and eventually, William Morrison himself. Sarah stood alone, before the iron gate. A sold sign hung crookedly on the side. Overgrown ivy curled around the bars like a noose. She walked the ground slowly. Empty now, but not silent. The echoes remained. In her hand, she held the final letter her father had written from prison. Sarah, they said you turned on me. But I know better. You did what I was too weak to do. Maybe I thought I was protecting you. Maybe I was protecting myself. Either way, I failed. You didn't. You rose. And I'm proud of you. Dad. She folded the paper and slipped it back into her coat pocket. This wasn't vindication. This wasn't a triumph. But it was justice. Rows of white stones stood in quiet formation. Sarah walked with solemn steps, stopping. Before one grave, Major Elena Morales killed in action, Kabul, 2010, honor before blood her former mentor. The one who taught her that family doesn't always share DNA, but always shares courage. Sarah saluted. I kept my promise, she whispered, then turned, walking into the morning light. No longer the fallback child, no longer the shadow, but a soldier, a whistleblower, a leader, and finally, free.